Welcome to Only Murders in My Mind, a Random Thought production. Hi, I'm Carol Bissett, a crime writer, and I invite you with my co-presenters, Liz Hedgecock and Mike Jackson, each week to our conversations on all things murderous. Hello everyone, it's Thursday, it's 5 p.m. and it's Only Murders in My Mind. And as normal, I have Liz Hedgecock with me.
Hello.
And Mike Jackson.
Good afternoon.
And today we're going to talk about Ian Fleming.
Da-dum, ba-dum, ba-da-dum.
The name's Bond, James Bond. Well, it isn't.
Or
Well, yeah.
Basildon, if you were a fan of Russ Abbott back in the 80s.
Oh, I love that, yeah.
Sorry, Mike.
I sometimes wonder why I come. Because
It's for the sparkling conversation and the excellent jokes.
talking of jokes.
No!
It's funny you should mention jokes.
Oh, I feel like I've just said release the hounds or something.
Why don't eggs tell jokes?
I don't know.
They
Why
can't come out of the shell?
No, because they might crack up.
Oh.
What did one wall say to another?
I don't know.
I'll meet you at the corner.
Oh.
I used to be addicted to the hokey pokey, but then I turned myself around.
This is just payback, isn't it? This is just payback for all the times we've embarrassed him.
I've actually been speechless for the last 10 seconds.
I thought we might make this a feature in the future. Yeah,
Indeed, a future feature.
a future feature.
At
The
work,
worst jokes.
we have on Friday at work, we have a interesting fact.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting fact Friday. Some really good things come up and you think, why didn't I know that? But obviously, you don't need to. So Ian Fleming, it's strange actually, because I've just recently watched two films about secret sort of espionage type things in World War II, where MI5 were involved in the very early, when they were in the infancy, MI5, and in both these, because they were like true stories. Ian Fleming was there as an MI5, and he was talking about M.
Yes.
Because that was somebody that and somebody said, why is this person called M? And another person said, because it scares him like his mother does. Which I thought was quite funny. But it does make you realise how far back James Bond, the spy thing with Ian Fleming, where he got his information. And
that's the thing, he based it on his own experiences, and he based people on people he actually knew. So, talking about the books here probably rather than the films, because the films go a bit off-piste occasionally from the books.
Yeah, they do now and again.
They seem to be unrecognisable some of the time.
But an absolutely fascinating person, Ian Fleming. I mean, as I say, he was in what was the early... MI5 is military intelligence. I don't know what the 5's for. I've no idea.
No.
There's MI5 and MI6, so...
I always wonder what happened to MI1, 2, 3 or 4.
Exactly.
You don't want to know.
But talking about fun facts, my two colleagues here have got some interesting information on the gentleman.
Well, I think probably one of the more famous ones is where the name James Bond came from.
Oh, yes.
Because Ian Fleming was an avid bird watcher.
Which is not what you expect.
It isn't, is it?
No,
not from a writer of James Bond.
Look, a green woodpecker.
Yeah. And he came across the name of, in a book about birds, when he was in the West Indies, a field guide by an ornithologist named James Bond. And Fleming thought the name was plain and unassuming. I feel sorry for James Bond there.
I think it said something like, what a boring name. I thought this is perfect for my character.
Apparently he later humorously acknowledged borrowing it from this gentleman.
Yes. Well, I'm sure that gentleman would not mind at all.
No. Well,
Probably not,
but I wouldn't have minded some royalties, I would think. Yes, you can have my name and it'll only cost you.
Well, the thing is also there's probably an awful lot of James Bonds around the place.
There are,
so, how could you prove it was I mean, you could maybe, you know, if you were feeling detective-y, like think, oh, well, he watches birds, and I've written a book about birds.
Yeah.
Ergo.
I wonder how many Mr. and Mrs. Bonds out there, when they have a baby boy, go, shall we call him James?
James.
Just to be spiteful.
Indeed. That's the point, actually. When you name characters, do you Google the name? Especially if they're a naughty character, do you Google the name to make sure that there isn't one that already exists?
No, and I've said, I think I've said this before, but, you know, my mind, it does wander off to places. I actually have got quite a few of my characters' names from gravestones, but never the two names, never the Christian name and the surname from the, because that would not be nice.
No.
But,
No.
you know, you do find some unusual names.
Yeah, I suppose they are dead, so they probably don't mind.
Yes,
But
yeah. I mean, some of people I know have said, "Oh, by all means, use my name in one of your books. I'd be delighted." You know, it's an unusual name.
I find that really weird when authors do that, particularly if it's a nasty character and they're like, "Oh, you know, thanks to my best mate for letting me call the, you know, the serial killer after him." Yeah. Oh, what fun we had! And you think, why would you even do that?
And the fact that they look alike is just purely coincidental.
Yes, nothing to see here. Move along now.
Yeah. You imagine going up to somebody, if you were a really famous writer and your books were really famous, and being introduced to this person and going, "Oh, hello," I'm backing away into a corner thinking they're serial killers though.
Yeah. I mean, I know sometimes writers do kind of auctions for names and stuff.
Do they?
But
I didn't know that.
So you can kind of bid to have your name in a book. So
well, I do it for free.
Knowing my luck, I'd be doing like a period, you know, Victorian thing or something, and I get, you know, I don't know, Sharon Smith who wanted to be a character, and I'd be like, well, that's going to be slightly problematic, Sharon.
I sometimes do plonk names in from a certain cartoon, but I'm going to mention nothing because I don't want to be sued by the people that make it.
Talking about, I mean, I know people who have crowdfunded their books before.
Oh, yes.
Have used one of the, you know, if you put £10 in, your name can be used as one of the characters in the book.
That is a good idea, because I'm thinking of doing a sort of a Kickstarter type thing in the future for my omnibus.
Yep.
Oh, that'd be good.
Because I fancy doing a special edition.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Like hardback with like a ribbon in it and all that.
Oh,
you know,
I'll have one.
Maybe some end papers. I know, and chapter headers and nice
But
paper.
that would be one way of rewarding people, because
Yeah.
when you're doing Kickstarter crowdfunding, there was always that reward, different stages of reward, aren't they, depending on how much money is donated.
Indeed.
Going off on a slight tangent, which I know is not what we do.
Well, you know.
But talking about
We were
names,
fairly good, actually, in the last couple of episodes, so I think we're probably due a big one.
Yeah.
I must have missed those 2 episodes when you were good. Anyway, my wife is...
I was excellent, thank you very much. And so was Carol.
My wife is an avid reader, and the thing that annoys her more than anything else is when authors use the same initials on names. So they might have a Carol and a Charlie and a Chet and a Chaz, and she really does fight. So why can't they think of different initials, soundings for names? She said, you know, it just drives her around the bed.
Oh, I found I'd done that with a book, and in the end, it was a Paula and me book. So we've kind of made a joke of it.
Yeah.
So
I do it all the time, but then I've got a very good editor who points it out to me. And also when I do my own editing, sometimes it says plain as the nose on your face what I've done. When I've been writing it, it hasn't been. But when I've read it back, because I listen to it through AI on my headphones, and I'll think, oh, no, I need to change some names here. They're just too similar. So I can understand where your lovely wife is coming from there.
So Ian Fleming.
Yeah, well, just going back to names, keeping on the names thing. Yes. Apparently, many of the names that he used in the Bond books came from people he knew. So
what, like Pussy Galore?
No, Scaramanga.
Yes, that's a great name.
Was somebody he was eaten with that he didn't get on with. Goldfinger was named after a British architect called Erno Goldfinger, whose work Fleming hated.
I am aware of his work.
That is amazing.
Sir Hugo Drax, who was the antagonist in Moonraker, was named after a friend of Fleming's.
Deep breath.
Admiral Sir Reginald Aymer Ranfurly Plunkett Ernely Earl Drax.
You're joking.
I hope not, because I'm not reading it out again.
Yeah.
And apparently,
for real.
Yeah, for real. And Drax's assistant, who was called Krebs, bears the same name as Hitler's last chief of staff.
Oh, that's amazing. That is interesting. I didn't know any of that.
No, I didn't.
As I said, having watched a couple of series recently where Ian Fleming is actually a named character because it's based on truth, and he talks about M. So that had obviously come from back in the day, the person that was in charge.
Indeed.
It was, that was interesting. One thing I do know, I mean, going to the Bond films, which is, obviously they overlap.
That's where most people come to Bond, isn't it?
Yeah.
Christmas or New Year.
Most
or
popular
Easter.
Franchise ever, and has grossed over $7 billion during its lifetime. So that the first one being Dr. No in 1962, and there isn't any end date for Bond films, is it? They just go on and on.
Do we know who the next Bond is going to be? Because Daniel Craig's stopped now, hasn't he?
No, I don't know whether that's been announced. Let us know if you know more than we know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We'd be interested in that.
Isn't it strange? Because I think I've watched all the Bond films, as most of us have, and many of them a number of times.
I don't think I've seen all of them.
I've never read one of his books.
Really? I've
I'm
read
the
quite
same.
a lot.
Yeah, I'm the same. I've seen every film, but I've never read any of the
Never
books.
read his book.
No, they're interesting.
I think we said in a previous episode that they're not massive books, are they?
No.
They're not very... They're quite
I was
readable.
looking on my bookshelf last night, and they're normal size little paperbacks, and they're 230 pages.
Oh, right.
I think that probably makes them about 40, 50, maybe
So novellas
55,000.
Just
No, they're
slightly above novellas.
They're short novels.
Small novels, yeah.
But the thing is, back in the day, novels weren't necessarily enormous in the way that they are now.
Yeah, see, I always think of like a crime novel particularly being a big read. And when we had Susie Bushell on,
yes,
and I was so heartened by the fact that her books are about the same length as my books, and I am quite addicted to her books now as well, the X books, and they're very readable, and they're around 50,000 words, which is what my books are. And I used to question myself and think, should it be longer?
Yeah, because lots of people have this thing of, well, if it's not at least 80,000 words, it's not a novel. It's like, yes, it is. Your expectations are just a bit
different,
small. But and the thing is, the size of the novel has changed throughout history.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because in Victorian times, they were massive.
Yeah.
Because they came out in monthly parts. So if you're going to have like 19 or 20 monthly parts with the last one a double, you've got to fill a space, haven't you? So that's why you have like a 700, 900 page tome. But then when you get to the point of, people want things to read when they're on the train, let's do one volume things that they can pick up in paperback. They're not going to be 700 or whatever, are they? Because they're being bought in a different context, because most of those 3-volume monsters you'd be getting through the circulation library, so you wouldn't be actually buying it yourself unless you're very well off. Whereas station bookstall books that you can buy for, I don't know, 2 and 6 or something like that, they're going to be shorter because economically it makes sense.
When you think about it, I actually imagine all of Dickens' novels were fairly lengthy, because again, they came out as episodes.
They were in that kind of part work thing. Yeah, I mean, there are some that are smaller, and if you think of like A Christmas Carol,
yes,
that's different. But I think that was a kind of a special case, sort of, Christmassy bound gift edition thing for young and old. So, and that did fantastically well. Never been out of print, instant bestseller. But
and then you look at something like Mills and Boon, which was very, very popular in its time.
It still is.
There's still Harlequin and stuff
very
like
short
that,
books.
Yeah, they're 50,000 words. Yeah. I mean, they do now go over. Some of their books are longer than that, but the average book that they sold originally was around 50,000 words. And some of the series, they still ask for that, because I've tried a few times to write medical books for them, spectacularly failed, but I know what the criteria is, and and it makes you laugh, because they go, we want your voice, we want you to tell this story. It's not a formula, it is a formula.
Yeah.
It is a formula.
Well, it will be, because they'll have their own writing guidelines.
Yes,
for
and they're
what
quite
they want.
strict.
Yes,
They are, however, anybody out there who fancies having a go at writing for this group, you don't have to have an agent or anything. you just send them the first, it's probably all done by email now, send them the first 3 chapters and a synopsis, and if they're interested, they will ask for more. Thousands of people do this, thousands, but that's how they get their writers. They don't go through agents. So, there is hope for people out there if they've got that genre that they like.
Want to devote yourself to love.
Yeah.
So going back to Ian Fleming.
Oh, yes, that's where we go.
You said you read the number of the books list. Do they deviate much from the film?
Well, for one thing, they tend to be a lot shorter and more compact, if you see what I mean. Generally, they're darker.
Oh, right.
So, there's not all this kind of slapstick and eyebrows and, gadgets in the same way, disappearing cars and clicky pens that can explode and all that sort of thing. And Bond is generally, I think someone's done an analysis of, if you drank like Bond did and you took the drugs because he's always on Benzedrine and stuff and who knows what, you probably wouldn't be able to drive a car at all, never mind in a straight line.
Or run across rooftops.
Yeah. So, I mean, it feels like there's a bit more watching and waiting, and there is kind of going into situations, and it's all a bit more tense.
Intriguing that, because I read that apparently Ian Fleming wasn't over enamoured with Sean Connery.
Not at first.
To begin with.
Yes.
He saw him as a stuntman, but it grew on him. And in fact, he built in his Scottish background.
Yes.
Because Sean Connery is a Scot.
Yeah.
So that was intriguing.
And he was most upset when Connery said he didn't want to do it anymore. Yeah.
He also, apparently, Fleming didn't like guns. When you think of his war experience and everything, he had an aversion to guns and things.
Yeah.
And yet, when you think of all the gadgets and things in the Bond,
things that explode.
But, I mean, then again, I think he was probably more desk-based.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was in Naval Intelligence and he was one of the people suggesting operations. And yes, he managed people, but, I think there was I read a note somewhere that, he was supervising one operation, but I mean, he was 700 meters away on a different boat entirely. So it's not like he was, in the thick of the action in the same way. Yes, he was absolutely involved in the planning and the logistics of how it was all going to pan out. But the thing that intrigues me is he basically wrote these on his winter break.
Yes.
His novels.
Yeah.
Because he had a house in Jamaica.
That's right.
He did, didn't he?
Called Goldeneye.
Called Goldeneye.
Yeah. Did he retire there in the end, or did he retire somewhere else?
I don't know if he didn't live there most.
He lived there when he was on his winter break, because his job, when he'd finished in Naval Intelligence, he became, let me see, I think it was a foreign manager for newspapers, and he oversaw a network of foreign correspondents. But every year he got 3 months holiday, which he then spent at his house in Jamaica, and that was when the books got written.
Right.
So I think the first one, Casino Royale, I think it was.
Yeah.
That took him a couple of months, and it's an interesting story because he was kind of I don't know about this. It all seems a bit improbable to me. But a mate said, "Oh, you should send it off anyway." So we sent it to Jonathan Cape, who kind of went, "Oh, I don't know about this," but his brother Peter Fleming, who's an author in his own right, was with Jonathan Cape and basically persuaded, go on, give him a go. And the book did really well. So it had 3 print runs, and that was where it all started.
It's not what it's...
Well, it probably helps, doesn't it? Yeah.
But isn't it strange how many famous authors... It's very much dependent on the publisher saying, "Oh, we'll give it a go." I'm thinking of J.K. Rowling, and the number of publishers said, "No, this will never work. We must be ruining the day they ever said that."
Well, I bet, yes.
I see that Fleming was a commander too.
Yes, he was, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think he was a lieutenant commander. Yeah, that was his rank.
Commander James Bond.
Yeah.
Did you know that apparently his books didn't go down very well in America to begin with?
Why is that?
Well, I don't know, but apparently he was at a dinner with JFK, John F. Kennedy.
Yeah.
And apparently John F. Kennedy said to the press, or said to somebody when they were asked about what he likes to read, said that From Russia with Love was one of his top 10 favourite books.
Yeah, and that really helps, obviously. If you're on, it's like if you're on Barack Obama's books I've been reading this summer list.
What's her name?
or Michelle?
No,
Oprah Winfrey,
Oprah Winfrey,
or Reese Witherspoon's book club, yeah.
So that made his popularity.
And then it's just shot up.
States.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, I think he was doing well anyway, but that just sent it through the roof. So
apparently, he met Kennedy in 1960 at a dinner party, where apparently Kennedy asked for some advice on how to deal with Fidel Castro, which apparently led to a humorous conversation.
So Ian Fleming saved the world, basically.
Yeah, probably. Sort of, yeah.
But yeah.
He probably said, send a spy in and, land them on the bombs and they can defuse them all.
But apparently his writing routine was he did 3 hours in the morning.
Yeah.
And then he'd do something else. And then he'd do another hour between 6 or 7. And he wrote about 2,000 words a day.
Blimey.
I know.
It's not a lot. Is it?
Well, it's decent. I probably write about 2,000 words a day when I'm in the
I
zone.
do about 1,000, yeah.
But and he said at that point, he never corrected anything and never went back over it. He just wrote.
Yeah.
There was none of this, I'm not sure about this. He just kind of went for it. And I suppose the thing is, if you know you've got 3 months and that's your holiday and you want to turn a book out and also you want to enjoy your holiday.
Yes.
You are going to have to be quite strict with yourself.
Yeah, he sounds like he had a really good thing going there.
We've talked, I'm sure in a previous episode, we talked about other writers who've had that sort of strict regime of putting a certain amount of time away, writing, aiming for 1,500, 2,000 a day, and not editing anything.
Have I told you about Anthony Trollope?
No.
Oh, there's a bit in his autobiography, and I remember telling a friend of mine this who was, quite literary ambition, and she was mortified when she heard this. Because apparently what he did was, he was still working for the post office at this point because he had quite a senior role in the post office. I think it was something to do with the introduction of letterboxes, as you do. But anyway, he had mornings, and he'd spend, I think, either 2 or 3 hours writing. So he'd do 5 till 8 or something like that, maybe 6 till 8. And what he did was he got out his pocket watch, and he would, kind of time himself. And his aim was that he'd do 250 words every quarter of an hour.
Oh.
So 1,000 words an hour. Yeah. And he would do that until the time came to stop, and then he would stop if it was, finish the word, and then that would be it. And even if he finished the book during that, say he was in the middle of one of his 15-minute things, he wouldn't go, oh, brilliant, done for the day. He'd write the end, he'd get another piece of paper, and he'd start the next book. In the same quarter of an hour. There you go. Like a machine.
Yeah. That sounds a bit like obsessive compulsive.
I don't know.
But
I
it's
can't
routines,
imagine
some
not
people
wanting a little break before you start the next one.
But it's amazing how some of these famous authors have always had, or some of them have had these very strict routines which have helped them to create what they create.
Yeah. And I think when you're you've got a publisher and you're in high demand, I think you're under the cosh a lot of the time as well. They perhaps give you some money before you write it.
Yeah.
What's that called?
An advance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No worries.
It's because we've never had one, Carol.
Well, I've only had one, and that was for audio. So I mean, the book was already written, so I wasn't under any pressure. No. I just put it in the bank and enjoyed it for a bit.
There's the saying to the writer, how long do you need to write this book? Now, Liz knows what I'm like. Oh yeah, I'll have it done in 3 months. Then 6 months later, I'm handing it over to her. But when they're threatening to take the money back off you, it's a lot of pressure. I mean, I don't think he had that issue because he had his routine, didn't he, Fleming?
Well, there was one that there was a difficulty with because there was Thunderball.
Oh yeah.
And that was it's weird because in that case, the film script came first.
Oh wow!
I know. Oh. Well, it was the novelisation of a jointly written film script.
Oh, and I never knew that.
Yeah, and there was a whole hoo-ha about it because, there was the film, and then this novel comes out with Ian Fleming's name on it, and quite understandably, the other 2 people who co-wrote the film script were like,
"Oh yes,
whoa, hang on a minute here." Yeah. But yeah, they came up with some arrangement where Ian Fleming had the novel rights, and then they sorted out the film rights, between all 3 of them in whatever way they did. That is
interesting. So there was a bit of a kerfuffle.
Yeah. There was a bit of a kerfuffle.
There was,
yes. But he was very interested in his books.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't the kind of guy who just handed them off to the publisher and went, right, off you go. But he, you know, he was like, he knew what he wanted on the cover.
That's, yeah, and that can be difficult, can't it, when you hand them over to a publisher?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I suppose from his perspective, he was doing well enough to probably be able to say, well, you know,
yes,
you didn't even want this in the first place, and this is done all right for you.
Yeah, I think you've got clout, haven't you? The more successful you are, because the publisher and the agent won't want to lose you as a...
well, especially with the films as well, because I mean, if the publisher got some of the film rights, then very nice.
Part of the $7 billion.
Exactly. Yeah.
I keep waiting for Amazon to knock on my door and go, we want to make The Warranty Detective into a series.
Yeah.
Well, you can dream, can't you, Mike?
Well, I mean, it happens, doesn't it? I mean, you just don't know. I'm trying to think who that author was.
You might need to narrow that down slightly.
I know. It was an author who had that sort of very strict routine.
Right.
And he had lots of sharpened pencil. We talked about it before.
We have.
Sharpened pen, Maigret.
Oh, Simeon.
Yes, Simeon, yes.
That's it, yeah. Now, he had a routine.
He did,
very much a routine.
And probably an electric pencil sharpener too.
It was funny because Liz and I both do art, and one of our art teachers told us never to use a pencil sharpener with our pencils, etc. And I go to an art group, and the lady next to me said, "Have you got a pencil sharpener?" I went, "You don't sharpen pencils. You know, you need a little blade."
I do.
Well, she went and found a pencil sharpener, and she came back with this lovely. And I said, "I stand corrected." And as soon as she touched the paper, it broke in half. And I went, sorry, because I felt guilty then that I'd like...
You tried.
Yeah.
But going back to Ian Fleming...
Oh, do we have to?
Oh, come on. No.
I thought we were going to have a whole hour about electric pencil sharpeners.
Yeah, do you remember, actually, a kid's series? It was a series of books, and it was called The Brain Sharpeners.
No.
It was about aliens who invade schools and they like take over people's minds, and they're called the brain sharpeners. Yeah, I remember them in my library when I was a kid. They were all right, actually. The first one was good. The second one,
there's a pencil museum in Cumbria.
Have you ever been to it? Have you ever been to the pencil museum?
Yeah. Interesting.
Is it? You found it interesting?
You look slightly weary, Carol, when you're talking about the pencil museum.
I went to the pencil museum once, and I thought,
all you got was
bored. If you're ever suffering from insomnia, go and spend half an hour there.
Cumbria Tourist Board, we don't mean
It's probably fascinating. But anyway, what I was going to say was it was seen as an antidote to post-World War II Britain, the James Bond books.
What, the pencil sharpener?
No, James Bond books.
Oh, James Bond books.
An antidote to post-World War II Britain.
I thought we were still on the brain sharpener.
Austerity and, I think there was still rationing.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, so the kind of...
So when was the first book published?
The glamour
62,
of Bond.
Dr. No.
Yeah, so things were still a bit... I mean, obviously out of rationing by that point, but things were still a bit... Oof.
And all the drama and the glitz and everything, it would have gone down really well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
And they made the films.
Did you find out what else he wrote?
Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. That was
lots
a surprise.
of people don't realise that, do they? Because that was just as...
Such a contrast.
That's so different, isn't it?
Well, apparently that was when, I think he'd been poorly, and someone said to him, I think had given him a copy of a children's, I think it was a Beatrix Potter book of all things, if you can imagine... Ian Fleming,
Beatrix Potter.
reading, whatever it was. But anyway, they said you should write up that story you tell your kid at bedtime, and that was where Chitty Chitty Bang Bang came from.
So all the things going through his head. Was he popular for anything else? Was he well known for anything else, or was it just James Bond?
I don't.
That's probably
which is
enough.
Yes, yeah.
Let's face it. I mean,
Casino Royale, by the way, was 1953.
Oh, right.
Yes,
so that would fit. Yes.
I'm sorry. I think it was it the first film that was 1962? I might have got my
could have been.
Yes. So I'm sorry, Liz.
No, it's fine. But you can kind of see how that kind of
would have
Britain kind of pulling itself back after war.
Well, that would fit in, wouldn't it, with the whole austerity?
And then there's all the Cold War stuff, of course.
Yeah, which fitted in really well. Because I was born in 1952, and we came back to England in 55. And things were still very much. There was lots of things you couldn't get hold of then. I mean, this is what my mum told me. I can't remember. I was only little.
Apparently, he did write some non-fiction as well.
Yeah. But I think the Bond was his big output.
Oh, that yes.
Yeah. I think there were 12 novels and there were some short stories as well.
Yeah.
But there are 27 films.
Yes, because he just carried on writing them after he died, didn't they?
Yeah, I think. Or they just kind of... I think they used the short... I mean, For Your Eyes Only, I think, is one of the short stories.
Yes.
Stories, yeah.
Octopussy, likewise. Living Daylights,
So they
likewise.
had the basics to do expand the story, didn't they, with the short stories?
Yeah. I mean, I imagine, they had a protagonist. And well, of course, they had a protagonist. And then they'd have, probably a female companion. As they
definitely,
say,
yes. Somebody gorgeous.
Indeed.
Sometimes you get... We've talked before about how people are now writing, new readers, new authors are writing the work of older ones. I'm thinking of Horowitz, who does the...
He's done some Holmes ones.
Holmes, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Is anybody doing James Bond?
Oh, there's been heaps of them.
Oh, okay.
I mean, Colonel Sun was written, and that's under the pseudonym Robert Markham, but that was actually Kingsley Amis.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yes, I saw Kingsley Amis' name on the list of people that have carried on.
Yeah, and then there's
writing.
Charlie Higson did the Young Bond ones, and there's another author who's done, I think, Young Bond books.
Yeah.
So it just keeps
It'll
going.
just keep
Just
going.
keep
Yeah,
going.
it's a machine.
If there's an appetite for it and publishers think they can sell it. I mean,
Look, they
it's
will
like
do.
with, Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple books. I mean, I've got somewhere a collection of 12 short stories, and it's just called Marple. And it's, I think, 12 female writers who've all been tasked with
writing,
having a go at doing a Marple short story. So.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, I mean, it is fascinating, and I can remember it would be called a fanzine now. Writing
fan fiction.
Yeah, writing stories. I was very much into The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Ah,
Do you remember Man from... And I wrote.
I don't, but I've heard of it.
You're far too young.
Sapphire and Steel. Now I do remember.
Yes, that came after that. Yeah, and I remember writing Man from U.N.C.L.E. stories with all the characters. But they were my stories, you know.
Well, the thing is, it's a great way to start writing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you have some characters, and you have the kind of the themes and the tropes and things, and it's a chance to exercise your creativity with a little bit of help along the way.
Never showed them to anybody, but I really enjoyed writing them.
It's a good stepping stone to how to put a story together.
Isn't that how the lady who wrote, I always get this wrong, 50 Shades of Grey, didn't she start with fanzines?
Yeah, she did.
She did,
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah,
she had,
fanzine.
Yeah, wasn't it? Well, didn't it start off as a Twilight?
It
Yes,
did,
that's right.
that's right. Yeah.
Which seems odd now, but
It does, doesn't it?
yeah. Well, here's the thing. 2023. Updated editions of the Bond novels were published, removing various aspects of the original books.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, there were some racial expressions that we wouldn't use nowadays. And I think there were some other things as well. And they basically said, we've tried to keep as much of the original content as we could, but, some things which are obviously nowadays offensive, we have removed. I don't know to what extent they did it, but...
they did that in Thomas the Tank Engine as well, though.
I think they did it with Flames 5, so, yes.
Yeah, things, as I say, things that we wouldn't have blinked twice at. Now I'd go, oh, you can't say that.
You only blink twice.
Yeah.
And apparently, for Your Eyes Only was a short story.
Yeah.
And Octopussy. No.
Yes.
He also wrote something called The Diamond Smuggler, which I'm not sure... Oh, it's non-fiction work.
Right.
Based on 2 weeks of interviews with somebody who was a member of the International Diamond Security Organisation.
Well, he'll have had lots of contacts, wouldn't he?
Let's face it.
Yeah.
Apparently...
I imagine he was the sort of guy who knew an awful lot of people.
Yeah.
Well, this International Diamond Security Organisation was headed by Sir Percy Sillitoe, who was the ex-chief of MI5.
Yeah.
Very handy.
Very handy.
See,
Again, who you know.
Yep.
Yeah. And we've said this before. Originally, MI5 and MI6, the people that were in charge, you never heard about them. They were kept secret, weren't they?
And now
they write books themselves when they've been out of service for a certain length of time. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you can't really blame them, can you? If they think they're going to make a living at it.
Mm-hmm.
But
okay.
I mean, as my probably my favourite Bond film was Goldfinger. Going back all that time, I really
Yeah.
Enjoyed that one.
I think I have a soft spot for GoldenEye.
Yeah.
Possibly also because I knew people who had the computer game.
All right.
And you could shoot people, which was...
You did never have that, did you, GoldenEye? The computer.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, it's still good even now. My kids will go and play it with the mates. Okay, maybe not for everybody.
Yeah. So,
how about you, Mike?
Yeah. I realised. Sorry, I'm going back again to Fleming. Ian Fleming. I should have guessed because we mentioned before that he went to Eton. He came from a privileged background.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
and his dad was a member of Parliament for Henley.
Oh,
indeed.
I didn't know that.
He died on the Western Front in 1917.
Yeah.
Apparently
so
Eton.
Fleming would have been pretty young.
Yeah, Eton and then Sandhurst.
Yes.
All the places you would expect somebody that...
Well,
I think they had trouble actually getting him into a steady job.
Oh, right, yeah.
So, I think his mum tried to get him into the Foreign Office and that didn't quite go to plan. And then he was in Reuters. But then there was this job in military intelligence, which, again, I'm not entirely sure how he got that. But anyway, he got there and actually he did pretty well.
He did, didn't he? Because, as I say,
I think sometimes it's a case of, finding your niche.
Yeah.
Whatever that happens to be, and that clearly was his. And I mean, it turned out to be, brilliant background for all those books. So.
I wonder how many people that like the Bond films realise that he was MI5 himself.
Yeah. Well, apparently he suggested an operation which was very similar to, the one called Operation Mincemeat.
Yes.
It was very like that.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm watching at the moment.
Yeah.
The film of that.
I've heard that's really good. I need to watch that.
It is very good. And there was another one, as I say, and that was about them going to... Was it? I can't remember what... Was it? I think it was Cyprus to blow up some boats. And he was involved in that as well.
Yeah. Apparently he was also an early advocate for electric cars.
Oh,
excellent.
A man before his time.
There you go.
He believed that electric vehicles could help reduce dependency on oil.
And he was right.
Yeah. He was right.
Yeah. Now, Mike's just going to talk about his, I've got to say, he runs our blog, don't you?
Yes, well, if you come onto the Only Murders in My Mind blog and search out Carol's book.
Carol's first draft.
Carol's first draft. What's happening is Carol is sending me a draft chapter of her novella.
Yeah.
And what I'm doing is I'm using AI to make it into an audio. So I'm putting that onto the blog, and what we want, the reason for it going on there is Carol, and it's in its raw state. It's very much in its sort of almost unedited state. And Carol is keen for you to come back to say you like this, not quite sure about that, suggest changes, etc. She's just open to suggestions, and we just thought this would be an interesting way for Carol as a writer to share some of her work with you and get some feedback from you.
Yeah, so we've got an interactive thing. So thank you for listening to this episode, and we'll be back next week. Bye for now. You have been listening to Only Murders in My Mind, a Random Thought production, produced by John Bissett. The music in Peril was composed and recorded by OM Studio Strings.